This podcast is brought to you by EnergyX. Are you tired of paying huge rates to the big cloud providers? Are you worried about being booted off a cloud platform if your company doesn't meet their ever-shifting standards? Ready to step up your data security and disaster recovery game? Well, ladies and gentlemen, your new cloud is ready. Introducing xCloud, the scalable, resilient computing cloud that is also actually affordable. It's high-performance compute for half the cost. HPC for HTC. xCloud from Red Team is opening a beta program for new cloud computing customers, and that means you, my friend. The xCloud is powered by the XMDC immersion-cooled modular data center from EnergyX. I've seen this data center in operation, and it is a total game changer. So if you want more information about the beta launch, go to the URL in the description. Type in promo code BETA, B-E-T-A, for 50% off of your first instance. And so the URL is going to be digitalwildcatters.com/EnergyX.
All right, cool, man. Well, dude, we got you back down in Houston from Mexico. Today on the show, we have Tim Taylor, which whenever I say your name, it just brings up home improvement.
Yes.
Which I know you get that a lot. I've heard you made that, but I never say your last name. And just like saying your last name right there, I was like, yeah, that does like instantly take me back to home improvement.
What's funny is, born and raised in Montreal, we have a coffee chain called Tim Hortons.
Yeah.
And people would hear my name and they would skip home improvement, just go like, oh, like Tim Hortons.
Yeah. So depending on if you're in Canada, they default to Tim Hortons. And if you're in the US, it's home improvement.
Which you have now one in Katy. You got a Tim Hortons in Katy?
I have a Tim Hortons in Katy?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
I've always heard about Tim Hortons and heard it's great from the Canadians. So, and I trust that they have good coffee. So I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
But so Midnight Marketing, dude. Yeah, you've been in Mexico for the last year. Your wife Macy got transferred down there to Schlumberger.
Yeah.
Following y'all's chronicles of moving. I have a lot of empathy for you. And I was like, I will never do that in my life, and so I appreciate the learning lesson.
But when we mentioned that we've moved to Mexico for our visas, people automatically assume that. Am I close enough here?
Yeah, you're good.
They automatically assume that they think Cancun or they think resort. And we moved to a place called Villa Hermosa.
Yeah.
Or Villa Hermosa. And
which, as you told me, is the West Texas of Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you talk about like energy poverty and like just it's rough. But it put things in perspective for sure. So a lot more grateful for things. Yeah. There's so much convenience when it comes to living in North America and just like the coordinate privilege of being born in a place like this.
It is crazy, right? I mean, even just I saw Missy had posted a story of HEB and how much she missed HEB, and I was I messaged her and told her that I had this intern come down here from Boston.
Okay.
I mean, this is Boston. I mean, this is in the United States, nice place, and he came down to Texas and could not believe HEB and like the size of our grocery stores, and so even in the United States, like here in Texas, we take that stuff for granted where you can just walk into a grocery store and have everything imaginable.
It expands too. Like my favorite chips are Miss Vicky's.
Yeah.
And now they have a new line of like air fried Miss Vicky's, which is like a lower calorie and like every flavor that you can think of.
Yeah.
It's just so cool, but it's good to be back.
So, for anyone that doesn't know you, I'm sure a lot of listeners know you, but tell us a little bit about what you do, what Midnight Marketing is, and we'll kind of dive into it a bit.
Yeah, so Midnight Marketing is a marketing agency. We started about 3.5 years ago now, so relatively young, and we focus on branding, on websites, and on marketing. Mm-hmm. That third piece there was digital marketing, but we actually dropped the digital, and now we're going to focus more so just on marketing itself, so like in real life events as well. Yeah. And I mean, our team, we have a couple team members here. Most of our team is in Montreal. That's where our creative office is. Yeah. And we focus on the oil and gas sector.
Yeah, I got a couple of, we'll talk about the team being in Montreal because, you know, it's not a very, at least I've never been there, so I can't speak on Montreal, but I don't think of it as like a very friendly oil and gas city. So we'll dive into like that dynamic here in a little bit. But, first, let's roll it back a little bit because, you're a serial entrepreneur. When I first met you, I think we met in like 2018.
18 or 19. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, you were here in the early days of Digital Wildcatters, and we saw these opportunities around marketing and content and things of this nature. But before that, you had a watch company, and which I wore those watches all over the place. I fucking loved them, by the way, and y'all's content and your marketing around that brand was great. You know, I think that you have a really unique skill set around branding and design, and
Thank you.
you know, being married to Macy, you got exposure to oil and gas, you know, through her connections in Schlumberger, and started to see this opportunity of like, hey, like all these oil and gas companies suck at marketing and branding. And so taking your skill set and applying it to that, you know, is there anything that I'm not articulating in like that opportunity set that you saw there?
No, man, it's so dead on. So like, as you know, being an entrepreneur, like you have to wear a lot of hats. Marketing becomes one of those hats that you wear. You got to, you know, wear your accounting hat as well. And then that's the part of the business that I fell most in love with, you know, starting businesses.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, seeing so much opportunity. Actually, in this room is where like you, myself, Jake, Carl at the time. You know, those
Damn,
were like the early
that
days.
was a long time
We
ago.
would get here at like 5 a.m.
And
we had so many good memories.
We had a
man.
whiteboard up on this wall. It's so funny for anyone that doesn't know that's listening to this. This podcast studio that we're in was our original podcast studio. This building used to be a big co-working space, and we rented out this room, and this room was podcast studio. It had desk. Our podcast table was a kitchen table from Jake's garage, and you know, I had some lights, and so like really rinky-dink setup compared to what we have today. But yeah, that was man, it seems like yesterday.
It
be
does,
honest.
and it's so cool. It's like I step back in here now, and it's like now you have this, like it's almost this entire building is digital wallcatters.
It is kind of it is kind of crazy to think about, but yeah, you know, I think what was interesting about those early days back then was that, you know, the writing was on the wall. And actually, I don't even know if you know this, but before Digital Wildcatters, I'd started a marketing agency called Amplify Media. I was like, there's all of it, and this was in 2016. I was like, there's all this opportunity, and I couldn't land a single client. Like, just no one was. Maybe I wasn't articulating it well, and then I was like, okay, well, you know, we just started creating content ourselves.
we got lucky with COVID. Like, you know, there's a lot of mixed feelings about that time, that period, but for us, we got incredibly lucky because customers couldn't go see their customers anymore. Our customers couldn't go see their prospects. And so without that, I don't know if we'd be here. You know,
that's actually, I mean, that is an interesting point. I mean, you think about what COVID did, it definitely changed dynamics. I mean, even, you know, we take a lot of sales calls that are Zoom calls that might not have, like, that kind of be weird before COVID, you know, and now it's just acceptable, and that's kind of the way that it is. And so, when in 2020, I mean, the same thing that we saw at Digital Wildcatters is like everyone's locked down in their house. Like, this is our opportunity to create content and get in front of them. And so it makes sense that other companies needed a way to get in front of people.
It was so interesting. I remember seeing the first, it was like mid 2020, and I saw a directional driller post a TikTok on LinkedIn. And I thought, okay, like from this point on, things have changed.
Yeah.
You know, for sure.
That was like a signal of like, okay, there's some fundamental change here.
Yeah. And for some businesses, it was horrible. It's just for ours with marketing, we see great marketing as like great storytelling. And like, it was a way for customers to communicate their story to, again, their audience or build audiences.
Yeah. And y'all mainly focus on oil and gas and energy companies specifically. And so, you know, let's talk about your workforce being in Montreal. You know, the dynamic, because some people may be like, oh, why are you not based in Houston? And like, I know the answer for that, because I mean, this industry, it's a technical industry. It's not a creative industry. And that's why it struggles with these things. Lots of creatives up in places like Montreal, for example. And so I'm going to give you a couple of questions here. It's going to be loaded. But first question is, you know, a dynamic of a place like Montreal being kind of a liberal leaning place, probably doesn't have a lot of oil and gas fans, building a company that helps oil and gas companies there. I want to hear about that. And then two, to kind of piggyback off of that, teaching creatives about the oil and gas industry. You know, they're working with some very technical, you know, directional drilling company, for example. These are technical things. And so tell me about like what it's been building the team and kind of company culture.
Well, yeah. So again, I was born and raised in Montreal. So obviously I have some ties to Montreal as a city and as a place. Montreal is beautiful. There's so much culture. There's so much art. There's
I've heard it's great. I need to come up there and visit y'all sometime.
It's one of my favorite cities in the world. But that wasn't the intention initially. I was looking for Houston. It was just a weird time. Things were locked down. I was trying to find graphic designers here, and with the salary price points that I was looking at and the price points that I wanted to be for customers, there was just a mixed match of like I couldn't make it work.
Yeah.
And I needed to find other opportunities. And I was also trying to find graphic designers in oil and gas. And so really like that Venn diagram, like the price was just too high. It didn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of the people that I was speaking to, like they just got let go from an operator or a service company, right?
Yeah.
And they were used to salaries that we just, again, couldn't be competitive.
Yeah.
So I looked to Montreal, and I mean, it was difficult at first to get people people equated oil and gas to tobacco, right?
Yeah.
But something's changed. Like in the last year, like we get people on and like they see what we're doing and they see that we're, affiliated and connected to like Digital Wildcatters and see what Social Octane's doing. And it's like, we're creating something that's very unique.
Yeah.
And very needed.
Yeah. Over the last few months, I've seen this as well. I've been doing some tests to see, can I attract people to Digital Wildcatters from outside of oil and gas, from other cities? And like an example is, found this fucking rock star up in New York City, and she does event sales and sponsorships, and she's done $8 million in sales last year by herself. And I'm in several meetings with her, and not only is she so hyped about Digital Wildcatters and oil and gas, the job was remote, and she's like, I want to move down to Houston and be in the office with y'all.
Right.
And so I think that there's this dynamic of a shift in the culture and perception of the industry, because it's like, oh, this isn't boring and stale like it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And it actually is very interesting work in an industry. And so you start kind of teaching the world about it, and then all of a sudden it's easier to recruit into it. And so
it's so humbling to be a part of it too, because like what you're saying, like Digital Wildcatters has played such a huge part in that, FTB, massive part in that. Social, like I think that we're the adjacent to all of us, like we're leveling this up.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty cool to now see the ramifications of what that's doing.
Yeah, the second, third order effects, like the ripple effects of what that actually means for the industry. And I think that when I looked at oil and gas, like in 2016, I compared it to Silicon Valley and tech.
Yeah.
And why did I want to go work in Silicon Valley? Just because of like, it just looked cool.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just about looking cool. And,
it's
you always
a big part of it.
Yeah. It really is branding, right?
Yeah.
And storytelling. And so, I think that all of these things are super important. I was talking to, there's this lady over on TikTok, and she works for, I think she works for MI Swatco. Anyways, she's blowing up. On her TikToks, she shows people like what life is like on an offshore rig. Like I messaged her, I was like, hey, I just want you to know how important the work is that you're doing. And you probably don't even know that. Like you're probably just like, oh, hey, I'm getting views on TikTok and like showing people, what offshore life is. I was like, but this stuff is extremely important. And so I just think that the rise of like content creators out in the field, storytelling, things like what we're doing, what Midnight Marketing's doing, FTB, all of these things compound and kind of build up this image. And so that can't be, stated enough. And I think what's cool now is like, you're starting to see like traditional oil companies, OFS companies start to drag along with that too. Right. And
I think that's so going back to the team, what's so exciting about, I think if you're in marketing and you see this industry, you're starting with typically a company that has a blank canvas or somewhat a blank canvas. And so you can really paint, like our job is to get the soul out of bring the soul of who they are into some sort of marketing plan, branding plan. But the canvas is pretty bare in terms of like what to compare it to. And so, so it's like, we aren't being compared to anything else. And so I think that gives the freedom of creativity, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it gives you some pretty wide parameters to operate with.
You can get inspired by like a Nike campaign and say, oh, I like what they did there. I can bring this into, a drill bit and see how we can like match these campaigns.
Yeah.
Like there's so many different things you can do.
Yeah. That's a big thing for me has always been like, I look for inspiration in other industries, other companies. And actually, it's pretty funny. We just shot some commercials with these actors for Clyde Pro. Okay. And I told Bossel, I said, hey, do you remember those Apple commercials back in the day where you had an old guy and you had a young guy, and the old guy was the PC, the young guy, and he had just like blank face. He's too young. He had no idea what I was talking about. And I was like, all right, dude. I was like, let's go watch it on YouTube. And anyways, so we recreated our own. So it's like you can take elements of other things that you see, and it's like, yeah, how can you apply that to a drill bit, which like on the surface, like a drill bit seems boring, but it's like, no, you can create brand. You can. Good storytelling around these things.
And that's a really good point to what you just brought up is like, you can be very innovative with your marketing and take what you've seen in the past and what's been successful and just find a way to blend it into what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite Apple campaigns.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's great. Like it's burned in my mind for all of my life. And so, So for y'all's services, and actually, Midnight's been a great partner for us, helping us with our marketing on our events. So, nothing but great things to say about the team over there. Tell me a little bit about, earlier you alluded to, you have several different offerings or services that you guys really focus on. Let's kind of take it through, if a OFS company is listening and they want to engage with y'all, what that process actually looks like and what y'all can help out with.
Yeah. So again, it's 3 divisions. It's branding, it's websites, and it's marketing. Okay. And I say it in that order because, Midnight didn't come out of this thesis or this business plan. It was just very organic. And so we're in those 3 divisions because that's where we saw the most need.
Yeah.
And it started with branding. And then they would naturally say, hey, okay, now we need a website. Okay, now we need marketing.
Yeah.
And so, typically for a branding project, that's a bigger project.
Yeah.
That might be 3 to 6 months of work working alongside a customer. And again, we're trying to pull out the soul of who is this? Like, who are you guys? Who do you want to be? No one's going to know more about their customers than them. So we don't pretend to know more about their business than they do. Our job is to understand and then prescribe, a branding solution, which is going to be a long-term play, and then marketing solutions, which is going to be a little bit, shorter term.
Yeah.
So
we
try to get them to try out marketing pretty quick because, again, there's short-term objectives that we could hit.
Yeah.
Branding is a longer play.
Yeah, I mean, on the marketing front, probably low-hanging fruit where you can get some quick wins together, start building up a relationship. I mean, branding and brand overhauls, I mean, that's a big task.
It takes time.
Yeah.
Like you think about like digital wildcatters, like that's many, many years into the making.
Yeah.
Right. And like for us, branding is perception. So like when you think digital wildcatters, like, if we had 100 people in this room and we were to say digital wildcatters, like what do they all think about that brand? That's what brand is, not what we tell you it is.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So that takes time.
Yeah.
It's reputation.
So, what's the I see you share your Instagram stories and, I'll do some really great fucking work on like animations.
Thank you.
And things of that nature.
I love that stuff.
I appreciate that because, like, I know that stuff's super hard to make.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I mean, we have some really great content creators on our team on DW, and like they wouldn't, they don't have that skill set to make that stuff. And so this is like very cool graphics. And actually, I was talking to you the other day because it's like, man, if we could create graphics like that and do like voiceovers for like TikToks, like they would crush. I was just like, it's so uneconomic to create them and to do them, but it seems like y'all crush it, and customers really enjoy those. So has that been something that y'all spend a lot of time on?
We're always trying to make the best customer experience possible. So, and we're always trying to make sure that our product is the best, right? So I get asked a lot, especially recently, about like AI tools. I'm like, well, if it fits into like making the customer experience better, then great. We're not going to look at the technology and find a way to market it. Like we're going to reverse engineer it. Like what do the customers need and how can we create the best customer experience with the best services possible?
Yeah. And let's talk about that a little bit. Yeah. Like, how do you think about utilizing AI within Midnight Marketing internally?
Yeah.
Because, I look at the business and, you and I have talked and, it's service business, people business. And so it's like, how can you do more and like scale people's efforts. Have y'all found anything through AI that helps y'all in y'all's workflows or the creative process? Because like GPT, for example, I find to be like a great catalyst for ideas of like that cold start problem of like just get started. So have y'all been utilizing that at all to help your business?
Yeah, we use probably 8 to 10 tools, but we don't just jump on the latest tool.
Yeah.
So like I myself, I'll check out 1 to 3 tools a week.
Yeah.
And most of them honestly are junk, or they're not they're not doing what they're advertised.
There's so much trash out there because a lot of them are just, I mean, GPT wrappers with a it's very thin and like they're junk. But one I've been playing around with is Jasper.
Yes.
And I think Jasper has some good potential and we've been using it. But
that's the copywriting AI tool, right?
Yeah, and what it does, before GPT came out with Builder GPT, it's like you could upload, like you could train the model with your collateral. So all of our events, we could upload all of our decks and everything on that. So it had factual information on what is Empower, what is Energy Tech Night. And then, I'd have it analyze all my tweets so that it could create a frack slap voice. And I found like the frack slap voice doesn't really sound like me, but it's actually a really good tone for the company. And so now you can go and say, hey, we need to generate an email campaign for Empower with Frack Slap's voice, and it'll take all the factual data from the Empower material and then write it in a tone of Frack Slap. And so I think stuff like that's like really promising and really cool. But to your point, I mean, there's just so much noise out there and not a ton of signal.
Yeah, for us, it needs to fit into that mission of like creating the best customer experience. And if it doesn't, then we're not going to fumble with tech and then build it out to match the customer's needs. We're going to start with the customer's needs.
Yeah,
right? So
for sure.
Yeah.
So, being down in Mexico, I mean, it seems like sometimes y'all don't even have power or Wi-Fi. So tell me about like the last year of running the business, and I mean all the stress that you had, in the personal life of moving. I mean, what were the challenges operating internationally?
Internet, like that's number one.
But is that decent internet?
I mean, honestly, I could live anywhere in the world. I just need like internet and like some sort of gym. That's pretty much it. And so I found a gym, but internet was definitely an issue.
Yeah,
it was tough. But some of the good things that came out of it was extreme delegation. Like a year and a half ago, because we were in Villa Hermosa for a year and a half.
Yeah.
A year and a half ago, like I was the main point of contact for almost the entire team. And like now we have a hierarchy and we have a chain of command.
Yeah.
And
kind of forced you to figure out your systems and processes and delegation, right?
Which is really good because we're like entrepreneurs, as you know, it's like it's so hard to delegate because you're always in this battle. Like, well, I can just do it. I can do it faster and better.
Yeah. It's actually funny. Like Julie, for instance, really struggles with that. And actually you and Julie have like very similar skill sets, personalities. Yes. And so like for me, I'm like, dude, the best part of being an entrepreneur is hiring other people to do the work. I'm like, take it all. And so I have like kind of I'm weighted towards the opposite end of that. But I mean, when, people like you and Julie are so like, you're a great executor and just get shit done and you do really high quality work. And so, like I could see you struggling with that where it's like, not only can I do it better, but I can also do it faster. And so, kind of pigeonholes you into getting stuck into that.
It's something that I'm working on, for sure. Cause I mean, I still like, one of our team leads had mentioned this the other day in the elevator at the office in Montreal. She's like, sometimes you have like some serious like it's almost like reality distortion with like timelines. Like they're very unrealistic. But
let me defend you real quick.
Yes,
because
before I do it for myself, I was gonna
let me do it for you. That's how you make shit happen. Like is by having I mean, a lot of people like to bash Elon for having these unrealistic timelines, but look at what Elon has been able to achieve. And it's because they push themselves. And even, a few weeks ago, we said, okay, we have 8 weeks until the end of the year. What's the important work for the next 8 weeks? And one of the goals was to get 1,000 hours of content into our content library. And I said, that's not good enough. I said 3,000 hours. And they're like, oh, dude, they just passed it. Like,
there we go.
Push people.
The bar.
Yeah. So like you raise the bar, and even if you come up short, you're probably better off than what that original conservative goal was. So I think that there's some tension there. Like you gotta balance that and not make things just extremely unrealistic, but
it's that window,
Yeah.
and I think as CEOs, as leaders of a company, like we do, maybe, we aim for the stars, but I think that is a good thing,
Yeah.
right? To your point.
Yeah.
Because if we don't push our teams, who will, right? Like if you just take someone on their word and like, well, that can't be done, I'm going to do what I can. If you just take them on that, then it'll always be just whatever that is. And that's probably going to be mediocre,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So finding that balance of like how much to push, but not so much that it's demotivating if you continuously miss your mark.
Yeah, you don't want to keep failing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what you need some wins and be like, oh shit, we crushed that. And so that's what I was getting at, is like, you don't want to set such high targets to where you're constantly
but
missing them. So
it's wild because now, you got me thinking, like when we first started, we churned out a website in like 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe even like, and that was like to the moon for me. I was like, why is this taking so long? It should take like a week. We should, and now we have a process in place and like the product is so much better, but it's like 3 months.
Yeah.
And so I would still say that we're much quicker than most of our competitors.
Yeah.
Are the levels good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
I'm checking my timer over here. I usually sit on that side, so I can't see. I'm upside down over here looking at the board.
I think we're 30 minutes in. So yeah, I mean, when we first started, like the designer was the engineer that would develop the site.
Okay.
And for a while that was me.
Yeah.
Right. And so you become the copywriter, you become the graphic designer. But the thing is, like the product then versus now, it's not even close. I was chatting with our VP of operations 2 days ago, and I'm like, Kat, like the stuff that is coming out of Midnight today is just like, I would hold it against anyone,
Yeah.
And this is not like me drinking our Kool-Aid. Like now, like we went from like good to like, this stuff is great.
Yeah.
And, the bar for the team is so high now.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious when something falls short.
Yeah. Sticks out. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're the same with the team too. It's like very obvious when we bring someone on if they're going to connect within the first couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We just know if it's going to, vibe.
Yeah. You always, going back to talking about that lady from New York that wants to move down here, I was like, man, I'm really nervous about that. It's like, let's work a little bit. Cause like, within the first 2 weeks, if someone's going to fit or not. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but if you raise the bar for the talent that you're bringing on, it makes sense to me that you can also see the bar raise for the quality of work that y'all are putting out as well. And I mean, y'all put out amazing work now, and and it's actually funny. I wrote this post today about bootstrapping versus funding and like the challenges of bootstrapping, because it's fucking hard, but you bootstrapped this company and have grown it within cash flow. So congrats, because that's fucking,
thank you.
It's an incredible feat to do that, and fucking hard. And I appreciate people that do it. And you've built this amazing team. Y'all got sick office. Love the design of y'all's office. I think that it looks amazing. And so, talk a little bit kind of about that. Just anyone else that's out there that's bootstrapping, some of the challenges that you've had to work through and how you've overcome those to build a great team and culture and ultimately a product.
Well, yeah, I mean, to timestamp this episode, congrats to Digital Walkouters, 2.5 million raised.
Hey, thank you, man. Appreciate it, dude.
That's awesome. And so, you wrote this post, and it was interesting because it's true. When you're bootstrapping, you might not be able to hire, the best talent because there's going to be a higher, salary cap for that.
You actually kind of alluded to that earlier when you were talking about the talent here in Houston coming from oil and gas companies. The unit economics didn't work out for you, so you had to get creative. And it's like, okay, I have to go somewhere else to where I can make the unit economics work out. Yeah,
and it's everyone's path is different. We got lucky. I attribute a lot of this to luck. So we got lucky in the sense that our customers pay for our business, right? And they vote every month. We don't sign contracts. So every single customer at Midnight is on a month-to-month contract.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And you know,
Tim's like, I like living on hard mode.
yeah. Well, sometimes it can be challenging because, you know, the year end is usually when, you know, businesses make decisions whether to try it another year or, you know, go different paths.
Looking at budgets. Yeah.
But if, again, just focusing on like the customer experience, like I think creating a cancellation policy that's very easy and easy to get out of. If you're in a position where you want to cancel with a company, making it more difficult for them is probably not optimal.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think one thing that it forces y'all to do is to be customer obsessed.
Yes.
And, you know, I was reading this memo from Jeff Bezos the other day, and he was talking about this day one philosophy that Amazon has. And someone asked what happens on day two. And he said, day two is the day that your company dies. And he's like, the reason that we're always able to be in day one is because we're so customer obsessed that we're constantly innovating because we can always do better to serve our customer. And so staying in this day one mindset and the way that you have your contract structured kind of forces you to stay in this day one mindset because you have to constantly deliver value or else, you know, they're not going to renew with you. Right. And so it's kind of this forced customer success plan.
It holds us accountable and it makes us earn our customers' business every single month and innovate on our services. Going back to, you know, not having to raise, we're lucky enough that we haven't.
Yeah.
There's enough orifices to go through as an entrepreneur that having to find investors is just one that we haven't needed to do.
Yeah.
But it's not off the table for the future. It's just, we just haven't been able to do it. And I like the freedom of not having to answer. Like we can change our model operationally and not have to answer to anyone.
Yeah.
Right?
You stay fluid.
Yep.
You can pivot, make decisions.
And we just made a huge operational change like a month ago. And there's just no one to talk to about that other than us trying things out and being very transparent with the team on what we're trying.
Yeah. No, I think that's actually one of the biggest benefits of staying bootstrapped is the ability to stay agile and ultimately do what you want and make the decisions that are right for the business that no one knows better than yourself. Right. And so, but yeah, you know, I just think that there's this huge debate over on Twitter, like what's better, bootstrap versus funded. And there's always, I'm like, it's not black. It's not black and white. It's like, depends on so many different variables. And I was like, you know, I've lived through both. It's like, there's pros and cons to both. And really actually kind of, you have to sometimes work backwards and determine what is the outcome. And, you know, it's also like, I think someday I'll start a company that's at the intersection of robotics and AI, because some of the companies I'm watching today, like I'm so inspired by them. I'm like, man, this would be fucking cool to be building this stuff. You can't go bootstrap that. Like this is, I mean, deep tech that you need capital to go do. And so, you know, it's just very much depends on the business and a million different other variables. But what I always do laugh about is the people that are always like, oh, you should just bootstrap, or people that have never bootstrapped a company before. And so they don't understand like the pain that you've gone through to build things. So
I mean, look, of course it can be very stressful, right? You've been through it too. It can be very stressful to have to like, you're counting on what your customers are paying for. So, but I will say that I think you and I have both seen, you know, startups in the industry, when they do get a raise, it's almost like the first thing they do is like the founders spend too much money and like they sometimes overpay for talent, and like kudos to people who have gotten great jobs in startups and been able to be a part of that wave. But like, you know, if like you might be being overpaid, and like, you and I have probably heard some salaries and you're like, oh, that's not what, like, if you're making like 180 as like a junior graphic designer, like that's probably out of scope. Like,
there's, I mean, there's good markets for knowing, you know, what talent should be compensated at, right? And it does make it tough when you're bootstrapping, and you know, there's just startups that may have a lot of funding, or bigger companies like oil and gas companies that like, oh, we would, you know, we need a good graphic designer. This Midnight Marketing company over here has some, and pick them off. I was laughing the other day because Shell put out an events manager position, and I actually told Sydney about it, and like they're paying like $250,000, like 250,000 cash, and all the benefits
for a single salary.
And it's probably to fucking do like some golf events, like probably way less work than what she does here. I told her about that, and she's like, why are you telling me about this right now? I was like, yeah, don't leave me, please.
Was it 250 OTE or was it 250?
I don't remember. Yeah. I don't remember if it, but I mean, it was.
What is nice about bootstrapping, and like you guys have done it up until now, right? Is like it does force you to be very resourceful with minimal resources, and like that's a skill set.
Yeah, you know, over on my Twitter, I put what are some of the pros of bootstrapping, and one was let me pull up my Twitter real quick. I'm gonna read it for you. One was along those lines. Give me just a second here. It's like you can hear the crickets as I'm looking. So some of the benefits of bootstrapping: limited resources forces creativity.
Yeah.
You actually think about the unit economics, what you've done. You organically discover path of least resistance and product commercialization, which you talked about, having these 3 product lines or services, and that you guys found that through feedback loops. And then an obvious one is maintaining ownership and control. So it's like we talked about all of those in this episode.
No, it's so, and it's oftentimes when I reflect on this, it's like there was no master plan on this. It really is that feedback loop, listening to clients, making adjustments. We've got it wrong plenty of times, man. We've had some major screw ups with some reputable brand names, and
it's part of it.
Yeah, we're in it for the long game.
Yeah,
and it makes us better.
Yeah, I mean, for us, like this year, like a little disappointed on certain things, really excited on other things, and I take a lot of inspiration from Jeff Bezos's memos. So this is the second time I'm going to reference it. So this is all I do in my spare time is read Jeff Bezos' memos. But remember, actually, no, this is I've heard Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs both say this. Like, we don't care if we have a bad quarter. Like, we're not building a business based on quarters. We're here for the long term.
Yeah.
And it's all right if you have a bad quarter, if you have a bad year, if you have, mistakes, bad interactions, like that's part of it. And you have to zoom out and think about the long term. And a lot of times in the long term, these little micro things, they don't matter. And so,
yeah, we're here for the long game. It can be challenging. Like, look, we've been in business for 3.5 years. The first 2.5, we're just like rocket ship, like crazy. Yeah. Right. Like growing so quick. And this last year has been like a reflection year, like really dialing in our workflows. Because you could have the best skilled people, but without really good workflows and communication, like you can't amplify those efforts. And so now we've been able to do that.
Yeah.
Our leadership team, Katrina, Allison, Rach, Sarah, like they've been so instrumental in making this happen. And now it's the system is just so agile and quick.
I love it.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's what we're actually tomorrow we're going for our first session of EOS implementation, because like what I've found in building businesses is 90% of the work is identifying the important work and getting everyone on the same page and aligned into executing on that, and then the systems and processes to do it to where you can have that efficiency. Because I've heard some good conversations around, like, people always talk about speed is important in startups, but everyone can be going fast in different directions and working against each other. Like, what you really care about is velocity, because it has a vector, it has a direction.
Yeah.
And so you want everyone moving fast, but in the same direction. And so the only way that you can do that is if you have good systems and processes. The only way that you can delegate and start enjoying your life a little bit is if you have good systems and processes. So, I've actually been really fascinated by y'all's business, watching from the outside in, talking to you about the processes that y'all have, because I know like those things they're hard. They're hard to get right in the type of business that y'all have, where you're serving different clients, different campaigns, different ideation. Like, it's hard.
Well, it's like that one saying, like, behind everything everywhere is chaos.
Yeah.
Right. And because even just to your point about velocity and direction, like there are some caveats to that too, right? Like, being a startup, being a young company, like you're going to change, you're going to pivot. And the thing is, like, how much to communicate to your team, because you might say something one month, but then your goals change in a quarter. Like, that's very normal.
Yeah.
But some people are like, well, but you said this.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's hard for some people to reconcile that. And also, I don't know if you saw this building your business, but I learned early on that my words carry weight, and I may say something that I'm not really serious about in a conversation, and then team takes it and runs with it because I said it.
Yeah.
And so I had to start being a little bit more reserved in my thoughts and not just letting everything flow out of my mind. And then, same thing. It's like, yeah, you may set some goals for the quarter, but I mean, quarter's a long time in startup land. And so things may change the next month.
We're so like in tune right now because like, a couple trips back when I was in Montreal, I had said something to one of our team members, and one of our leaders like pulled me aside and said, "Hey, like when you said this, like, you're not just like one of the team members now. Now it's like you said something and it has some repercussions."
Yeah.
And I didn't think about it. I'm like, I defended it a little bit. I'm like, wait, no, like this person's totally right.
Yeah.
It's 100%. And so I'm trying to like get myself away from being in those types of positions, or just be more thoughtful with like, your words do have impact.
Yeah. More selective and thoughtful of what words you put out there. And
because people are listening, and
yeah.
I had another conversation so when we first opened the office a year and a half ago in Montreal, one of our marketing chords had reached out to me recently and just said, when you gave that speech, like I gave like a little just welcome speech to like our office in a new era. We were only 10 in the office at the time, and he was like, that was so motivating, like that like changed my perspective on like the company, and like I didn't think anything of it. I didn't prepare a speech, and it's like, wow, okay, so going back to your point too, like there's been times where. So I just recorded this video that was released at a Social Octane event, and it's like what felt like several hours of footage boiled down to like an hour, like a minute or two.
Yeah.
But it felt like hours for me being in that seat. And I said so many like, if that footage is released, as like I'm in trouble, because there's so much in there that doesn't even make sense, and it's it's the marriage of being being recorded, but also just
that's the footage. I'm gonna get my hands on it. And,
one of our video editors.
All right, I'm gonna back channel. And
I said
get
some
them all
like
in there.
silly things, but it's like I'm also learning to keep things in check and like our So, but what I will say is like the team is just. Going back to like being in Mexico for a year and a half and Delegation, the team is just phenomenal now. It's like truly, if something happened to me, like Midnight wouldn't die.
Business
Whereas like
keep running.
a year and a half ago, like probably not. But now, especially now that we have like business development in place and like things are working in that direction.
Yeah.
I've been able to remove myself from this.
That's awesome.
And now really look at like the growth. And now that I'm back in Houston, I feel the rumblings of what's coming.
Yeah. So. I'm sure you're energized being back here, and this is the energy capital of the world. So lots of opportunity here, man. But dude, I'm super pumped to have y'all back here. Not just you and Macy back in town. Y'all's house looks beautiful. Can't wait to come visit it.
Yes.
Y'all building an office in the backyard? Is that what you're doing?
Yes.
Dude, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need a place to work. You can have your office in
a
your backyard.
little cave back there.
Yeah.
I'm going to have my little cot like Jake.
You're like, I'm never leaving. This is my new house.
That'll be it. Yeah.
Well, dude, if anyone's listening and they want to reach out to Midnight, where can they find you guys?
Midnightmarketing.com.
Easy enough. Midnightmarketing.com. We'll leave a link to it in the show notes, so you guys can check it out in the show notes. You can also find Tim over on LinkedIn, Instagram, all your favorite social media platforms. So, dude, appreciate you coming in, man. It's good to have you here. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, if y'all enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. If you need marketing help in the energy industry, highly recommend reaching out to Tim and the team at Midnight Marketing. Catch y'all next week.